As we all know, we're in this age of disinformation now. There's falsehood everywhere. Disinformation is the nature of the age. My message is we have to practice modern communication techniques to cut through all the fog and all the falsehood and all the distortion, or we're not going to succeed. We have this kind of quaint idea that really good ideas kind of magically sell themselves. And we don't like selling. That's manipulative. That's dirty. Well, when you're selling the truth, it's not dirty. It's actually necessary.
That's part of a trailer for a new book from a pioneer in the communications industry. David Fenton founded Fenton Communications, the first public relations firm dedicated solely to progressive social change. He's out today with the new book entitled The Activist's Media Handbook, Lessons from 50 Years as a Progressive Agitator. And David joins us now. Look forward to talking about the book. But just in the break, we were talking about the problems we're looking at today, disinformation leading to violence, the coarseness, the lack of civility, and the direction we're headed in. And you say there are some other solutions. What are they?
Well, we can either have a democracy or we can do something to rein in all the intentional, purposeful falsehood spread on social media and on Rupert Murdoch's network. When it comes to social media, there is a simple proposal that I wish the Congress would pass, which is make the companies liable for not what individuals post. That's not the problem. The problem is the algorithms that boost the false, salacious, reptilian, misleading posts to millions of people to keep people on the platforms to make money. They should be liable for that. And if they were, it would cut down enormously.
Change everything.
It would. And it's not a hard thing to pass, and it's consistent with the First Amendment. It's just that the law made it so that these platforms have no liability whatsoever. That's unique.
No responsibility, no liability at all. Okay, so let's talk about the book, especially in this atmosphere that we're in. How can people effectively get a message across when there's so much else swirling around?
Well, you know, the first principle of effective communications that we know from cognitive science is the brain learns from the repetition of simple messages. And I want to stress repetition of simple messages. Now, progressives and Democrats don't tend to like simplifying things. We like complexity. And we hate repeating ourselves. So in effect, we don't like what works. Now, the people that go to business school who are dominating some of these debates right now in the Republican Party, and I do work with some Republicans and we could talk about that, but they're smart about this. You know, stop the steal, make America great again. We don't like these kinds of slogans, but that's how the brain absorbs information. So we have to get over our disdain, and we can simplify honestly and truthfully, but we need to simplify. Also, they have a unified echo chamber, and we have the Tower of Babel. So that's not smart. So we need to make more of a focus on reaching the public with the truth rather than hoping our good ideas will magically work.
Right.
So, David, how does truth compete against YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, filled with sometimes garbage, sometimes misinformation, an assorted abundance of misinformation?
Well, like I said, if you made YouTube liable for what their algorithms boost, all this climate denial, for example, that's on YouTube, which is a cesspool, there would be a lot less of it. So that's an important thing to do. But also, we can be smarter. You know, I work primarily on climate change now, because if we don't solve it, we won't get to solve much else. And the language of the climate movement, I'm afraid, is largely not understandable to much of the American public. People don't know what emissions are, or carbon, or net zero. You know, I'm very fond of Joe Biden, but I'm afraid when he calls climate change an existential threat, people don't know what that means. We should talk about pollution, trapping heat on Earth, and we need to stop the pollution in order to have a normal climate. So we can be much smarter to unify and simplify our language so that people will get it.
You know, David, our friend, a progressive, strong progressive, Anand Giridharadas, I think he'd be comfortable with us saying that, has a new book out about persuading people and about the way that Democrats and progressive activists speak to their own base. And he says we can't condescend to them. We can't tell them that the thing they're actually concerned about is not what they should be concerned about, whether it's crime or immigration, because you're going to push them into the arms of somebody who is listening to them. What do you make of the way, particularly around the midterms here, Democrats are talking to their voters?
Well, I think it was a mistake not to talk about the economy. It's always the economy, stupid. That's not a new lesson. And I think that now Democrats are finally starting to talk about the part of inflation that is purely a ripoff from companies taking advantage of the situation and jacking up prices. You know, Biden's now talking about the oil companies and their incredibly, outrageously high profits. That's just a ripoff, and we should call it that. So that's something people understand as they're feeling pain at the pump. And, you know, there was a story today, I'm sure you saw in the paper, about how food companies are taking advantage of the situation and jacking up prices way over their costs. So we need to talk to voters that way, and they would understand it and identify with it.
All right. The new book is entitled The Activist Media Handbook, Lessons from 50 Years as a Progressive Agitator. David Fenton, thank you very much for being on the show this morning. Nice to see you. And up next...